All right, guys. Today we got John Sears on. Most of you know him as the tech guy, the rule guy, the guy that tells you your shit's out of date by 10 years sometimes.
Sometimes.
There's those people that show up there and you're like, man, I can see from here 50 feet away that them belts are 50 years old.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's been quite a few folks. It generally happens when you go to bigger events that have their locals that are part of maybe some index classes or an open comp or a bracket style class.
Yep.
And they don't want to, run their local clientele away. And here you are, you're making, let's say, pro mod groups just adhere to every little nuance of the rule book. Radio guys, adhere to that stuff. What we do at Sick Week is pretty tight as well, and you go out there and then, somebody rolls up with some belts that, expired in the 90s, or somebody has an M98, motorcycle helmet, and, it looks like his dad wore it in Vietnam, basically.
Yeah.
Just worn to the point where you're like, dude, let's try to get something a little new here. In the bracket guys.
And you guys are good at working with people, though.
We try.
Yeah.
We really do.
You guys have a good program on helping people actually get down the track, not just get away,
Right.
figure it out, come back when you're legal.
I think that's the biggest part of it, right? Like there's that customer service aspect of it. And early on when I started racing, and there's a lot of people out there that would be like, well, it still needs to be that way, you would roll into tech and you'd be scared shitless basically. And you'd go in there and the guy would be just hard line, would not even budge in one way or another. It could be, a New Year's Eve race, right? And you're running on Sunday, which is now January 1st, and your stuff expired December 31st, and he's telling you can't run. Well, you just texted me in yesterday for yesterday's bracket program.
Yeah.
I'm teching in for today's bracket program. I was legal yesterday, but now I'm not legal today. That's right. Go park that shit or go get you some new belts.
Mm-hmm.
And I understand it. I understand that stuff. But there's also got to be some sort of common sense, and there's got to be some give and take. Racers must be responsible, right? They have to be accountable and stuff like that. We want to help them and educate them and move them in the right direction so they can be safe and so that they can conform. Because oftentimes what happens is that guy that, you remind him about something, like I reminded a dude about getting his window net in Orlando. Put your window net up, buddy. Get it right. Puts his window net up and winds up pancaking the wall on the driver's side.
Yeah.
I see him as they're towing the car back. He looks dead at me. He goes, the first thing I thought of when I hit the wall was, thank God he told me to put my window net up.
Yep. Because that just keeps everything from getting that much worse.
Right.
Whether it was going to be a problem in that moment or not, it's just, I would feel so dumb you hitting the wall and your window net's just sitting there. I felt the same about when I raced the slower car and I had a Hans device in my bag, and it's like, okay, this is a 10-second car, but like I own this gear. If it sits in the passenger seat and I hit a wall and my Hans device is sitting in the passenger seat, I'm gonna feel real silly. But then I'm like the guy in the 10-second car with like full head to toe fire suit and
Right.
Hans and this and that, and it's like, this feels extreme, but not having it also feels dumb because I own it.
Exactly. And that's one of the things is we see people that do race at various levels, right? Like some folks, they run quicker than 999 or 639, and they have the licensing and the gear and everything else. And then we've got people that, they don't run that fast. They run, 1150 or 10.0s or whatever it may be. And I've had people, roll in, with a 15 suit, in date, Hans, beautiful carbon fiber helmet, shoes, gloves, the whole nine, a certified chassis, everything else like that. The car goes 1040s.
Yeah.
Like they just, they're the kind of people that you look at and you go, that guy's preparing himself to go faster in the future, and he's got all his gear that he's ready to go. And
Yeah.
you won't have to buy it again. And that's one of the things that's, when you build a car, right? You know, am I going to build this car to go 850, or am I going to build this car to go 750 and be 25.5, or we're going to go sub 750? And then do we have the right materials? Are the bars in the right locations? All those different things, right, come into play. So regardless of where we're at today, right, I always look and tell people to kind of build towards the future of what they've got going on.
Yeah.
You know, you're
Doug
going to
Cook
want to
told
go
me-
faster, right?
He said, he was like, friends don't let friends do 850 cages. Not anymore.
Right.
It's just the cars are too easy to go that fast. It really is. And it sucks to hear because the next step is pretty aggressive.
It is.
850 cage is fairly easy to put in, but they're so easy to go 850s. But then classes like Sick Week, thankfully, cater really heavy to 850 cars.
Right.
Which is nice because you know that that's like a ceiling for most people is like 850, that's a street car cage. I'm good.
Exactly. You know, and with an 850 cage, you can still have your swing outs. You know, something that you can still have some easy, you know, in and out with.
Yep.
Take it to the grocery store, do whatever, not have to climb over a bar. You can just remove the bar and you can go drive around with it, and it's not really a big deal. When you get into the funny car cage and you're driving around in the street with it, now do you have the proper protection around the funny car cage, right? We know somebody that lost their life driving their car on the street as a funny car cage, didn't have a helmet on, was involved in a side impact crash, and lost his life due to that.
Well, even that too, whether you have your helmet on or not, most people, when they're in their car on the street in a funny car, I bet you could see it on Sick Week if you really looked, was they just had the lap belts.
Right.
And I was guilty of that as well because, you know, putting a 4-point harness on, 5-point harness on every time you get in the car to go drive it up the road is a lot.
It is.
My passenger was actually guilty of not having any seatbelt on many a times.
Right.
And there's no dinger in my car.
No, I mean, like you look at that, right? You're like, all right, you know, we're in a very safe car, right? A car that's made to go fast, a car that is, you know, has a spec chassis in it, and it's to help you survive some sort of accident and everything. Impact on the street is probably going to be a little bit different, right? You're going to get T-boned by some guy in a dually, or, you know, you're going to get rear-ended by somebody, or, you know, sideswiped by somebody on the highway that lost control of their car due to a tire going out or something like that, right? It's gonna be completely different.
Well, and drag cars aren't super T-bone like designed.
Correct.
It's not like a drift car where they have like the extrusion bars that go into the door and you have all this space here that keeps it from hitting you. Like a T-bone drag car is like the cage is going to push up against you.
It absolutely is.
And like a Corvette, you see people try to put cages in those and it's just a mess all the time. There's no space. And some cars just have no space and it gets even more dangerous.
Yep.
When we put my funny car cage in, they redid it 3 times because I'd sit in it and it's like, no, this is crazy. This is too close. Right. So they kept moving it, like just trying to maximize space, and that's the crutch, I guess, of driving these cars on the street. But then, so you're saying people are scared in tech, but the real fear would come in class racing tech. Those guys are probably scared still.
I think what we've seen some leveling out of that, right?
Because there's 2 techs. So to explain to people, there's your safety tech, but then there's is your car legal for this class, or does it have too much motor, too much nitrous, too much turbo?
Right. And then that gets into some very specifics, right? You know, turbochargers, some classes just have the inducer exducer measurement. There's no hot side, right? They don't care about the hot side. Some have inducer exducer both on the hot and cold side. Some have even a material thing, right, where you can only run a cast turbo or you can run a billet turbo. Cast stuff is really in the past and is in some of the slower classes and stuff like that. You don't see too much cast out there now. You'll occasionally pick some stuff up like at World Cup where there's those oddities and those very specific rule sets and stuff that
there's a big rule set there.
Yeah, we kind of bring everybody in together and then we try to let it sort itself out, which is pretty wild. But yeah, on that side of things, you know, making sure that the cubic inch of the engine is correct, making sure that, you know, if a material is called out in the rules, whether it be a cast cylinder head or a billet cylinder head? Is there a weight penalty for that? How do you look at those and, figure out what's what? And, blocks, fuel types, we test fuel often, just to make sure that nobody's messing with it. If you don't check fuel, right? People know you're not checking fuel.
Yeah.
They're gonna mess with it. If they know you're checking fuel, 9 times out of 10, they're just gonna leave the fuel alone and they're gonna try something else somewhere else.
Yeah. So are you thinking people will be throwing like nitro in there? Would
So,
that be like the fuel of choice that
yeah,
is banned?
it's something. You look at what is it, M5 out there and stuff like that, and there's some people that are pretty tricky with their mixing and whatnot. And you can always, it always has a little bit different odor to it, but also it will send the hydrometer off the charts when we check it. So if a fuel has a spec of, let's say, 799, it's going to go way over 800 if it has any nitro mixed in it at all.
And even a splash of nitro is a big, it's aggressive.
An eyedropper in that much M1 right there will affect its.
People don't know how potent nitro is.
It's insane.
Yeah.
It's insane.
And you can't even light it on fire. It's like, it's hard to actually burn. Like,
Absolutely.
It's a cool fuel for that reason. But then, yeah, I mean, at World Cup, Hondas have gotten in trouble for it many a times. People put it in the oil just to get it to go back up the crankcase.
Yep, through the vapor.
Yeah, so like they'll put some in the oil.
Yep.
And then people have to test the oil. Like that's how potent it is that if you just get the vapor of it into your cylinders.
Yeah. We take oil samples at World Cup.
You have to.
Yeah.
Because racers are pretty smart.
Oh yeah.
They're
Racers
crafty.
are way smart. Racers and tuners are some of the most devious people on this planet, and I don't mean that in a negative way. They are constantly trying to push the envelope and think outside the box. And we've got a guy in John Calivas right now in Ultra Street that you never have to worry about that guy sandbagging or trying to play a game. He goes out there and he puts everything into his program that he possibly can, and it often highlights my shortcomings as a rule maker in projecting what the potential is of a given combo. And he will continue and continue and continue to scratch at every little nuance of his tune-up until he goes out and sets a record. And that's what that guy's all about.
Well, there's a few people like that are tough. He's got a pretty standard combo, I would say, right?
Yeah.
It's like a small block Ford, single turbo.
Yep.
But then there's the people like Mark Mickey that are hard to figure out how to slow down, and people like Ryan Milliken with the diesel stuff that are like weird combos that are hard to get in check.
Oh,
because how do you add weight to a turbo or a diesel that already weighs so much?
Right. We've already got him out there at an extreme weight, of like 3,300 plus pounds, an X275,
and he could tow the cars, that
he would
racing.
not have a problem. He would not have a problem. I believe that guy could run with the chutes out and not have any issues with getting down the track. But to me, that kind of diversity, right? Like we see White Rice, we see the diesel, we see, Dave Fiskus with the, V6 Buick, which is an old combo, right? Like that combo's from the 80s, and it continues to prove itself in that Fox body chassis as a potent competitor within the Ultra Street combos.
And that thing's like, that chassis is pretty simple from what I've seen.
It's very simple.
Stock torque boxes welded in there, like just your basic Fox body.
Yep. It shows, one, that how good the Fox body is, right? But two, how simple it possibly can be and how you don't actually have to out-trick everybody in the chassis department. You just have to have something that works well. And he's got a great tuner with Cheeseburger and everything else like that. That guy's,
I didn't realize Cheeseburger was on that.
Cheeseburger is probably one of the most underrated tuners out there. That guy tunes a ton of cars in X and Ultra Street and some other classes, and really just has a great handle on stuff. And I don't think he gets the credit he deserves.
I've heard his name a lot more lately, I would say.
Yeah.
Personally, I've just heard his name popping up in various conversations, and it's like, oh yeah, Cheeseburger touched that, and it's like, interesting.
Right. He's definitely like flies under the radar. Doesn't pump himself up, doesn't get on social media much. He just
Mm-hmm.
does his thing, man, and it's pretty potent. what
The
he's
best
capable of
tuners
doing.
seem to be a little bit more,
Right.
reserved. And I think tuners also tend to have a little bit of you have to have some kind of something wrong with your brain to be that good, I think. Whether you're like
Yeah,
on the
it's
spectrum somewhere or something, it's not a dig at them, it's just how it is. Like, to be that good at what you do, you have to be like neurotic, and you have to be really really smart in a specific spot.
right. And that's, I think that's one of the things is I've seen a picture of Cheeseburger with like 4 laptops, on his kitchen table, looking at 4 different people's data, while he's trying to eat dinner. And he's looking from one to the other, and he's trying to pick up different nuances of the tune-ups, and he's trying to see what he can do. And the fact is if you can tune, let's say, like an X275 car, let's say a small block Ford, an X275 with an 88 millimeter turbo, you're going to learn a lot of things about maximizing that combo. Well, there's got to be some takeaways from that you can transfer into your Ultra Street stuff and go, man, we learned this over here. This is where, and vice versa, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the more laps and the more data he gets on these combos, the better he's going to be. And I've seen him tune nitrous big block cars, nitrous small block cars, pro charge combinations, and turbocharged combinations, all with great success.
So it really doesn't, it's not a specific thing, or probably even a specific ECU. It's really just across the board. I mean, he's probably tuning on big stuff and fuel techs and
I think he's Holly and Fuel Tech, and Haltech.
interesting.
Those are his big
'Cause,
3, I think.
that becomes another thing when you're talking about tuners. It's like, okay, but what are they on?
Right.
It's a different world when you throw them your Haltech versus their Fuel Tech that they were playing with. And most can adapt, and some probably just say no.
Yeah, I think it goes back to what you said about being focused and being, spectrum, not a negative way, but just have the ability to pare everything down to those little dots and parts of the tune-up that people miss, right? And it's because they're so focused and they're so well-versed in the use of all these various ECMs and everything else like that probably bodes well for his future in this endeavor.
That's cool. So is Ultra Street going too fast? Is it going too fast? Are you worried about, how much do you worry about the car count versus ETs versus keeping people happy? Because it's this balancing act of like, okay, you can make the best rule set in the world, but 5 people might show up.
Right.
I mean, RVW is kind of...
And that's one of those things, right? Like, I'm a drag racer at heart, like everybody else. I just want to go out there and let go of the button, have some fun, and go fast, and go as fast as I can with what I've got. And Ultra Street continues to push the envelope and stuff. And I think the faster you go, what it does is it narrows your field down. And we recently revamped everything, and I've gotten with the folks at RORS, and there's a committee involved with rulemaking and stuff like that now.
Is that a new thing now?
Yeah, so they were basically managing the RVW Pro 275 LDR stuff.
Okay.
And I was working X275 and Ultra, and of course the limited street stuff. And with all the recent ET gains and everything else like that, it's become monumental to the point where I'm just like, I need some freaking help over here. And they're like looking at me going, you need some help over here. You can't do this all by yourself. This isn't good.
Yeah.
So, let's get this thing tightened up.
And now you're saying it's not good for the other racers.
It's not good for the other racers, right?
Like,
and it's
you're
not
trying
good
to make
for
it
the organization, right? It's not good for the organization. If the organization is built on high car counts and quality racing and everything else like that, and we've got a program out there that's head and shoulders above everybody else, we've got to reel it back in a way that will continue to allow those guys be competitive that are already out front, right? You got to bring them back some, but still allow them to be competitive, right? Because you hate punishing performance, but that's basically what we do, right? And then you have to figure out how to work everybody else into the equation to get that level of competition and parity back into the program. And that's what the committee hopefully achieved with this last rule set. But it usually takes 2 to 3 adjustments, and there's some growing pains and all of that stuff right there. And their familiarization with the rules packages and stuff like that is really
So did they do much of a swing on the new rule package?
Yeah, there was a pretty big swing for the turbocharged cars. If they're going to continue using the present cover with a 250 surge slot, they're going to have to carry an extra 100 pounds.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, that's a pretty big.
So it's a pretty big swing.
That's a hefty amount of weight to add to a car.
Yep. Or they can change up,
Yep.
and they can go to a 180 cover, and then they can take 25 pounds off of what they currently are.
Huh. So what do you think people are going to show up to? I mean, these new rule set are in like a week at Ducks Race, right?
Yeah. This is going to be a week and a half. That we're at. Well, it's going to be a week. We'll start tech on Tuesday of next week.
So do you think people are going to be trying to go down size, or do you think they're just going to be adding that weight? Maybe some people will try.
I think it's going to be a mix. I think what you see with turbo cars is weight doesn't affect them the way weight affects a Pro Charged or a nitrous car.
Yeah. I mean, that's going to be an interesting one to see what happens with Ultra Street, because, it's one of the I always look at Ultra Street because it's like right there for me. I've got like a 490 car. Ultra Street's kind of like the one up. Like that's like the closest one for me. Yeah, I could try for like 235s, which would also require a bunch of changes on my car. But it's always, I guess that's fairly newer that's sort of taken off. But Ultra Street always seemed like the entry level,
Yeah.
I would say. The cars are fairly basic. They're not super crazy.
Right. They go from what you see with Kevin Fisk's Mustang, and that's actually Cheeseburger's Mustang with Dave's engine program in there. It goes from that to some fully tricked out latest and greatest units with Marilat and boxes in the back and custom fab rear ends and all the bells and whistles that go along with having a car that's 25.3 and
because like Ronnie's car is all out, like that's a purpose built like Ultra Street legal deal that's got all the bells and whistles.
Absolutely. You look at something like that was run NA for years, right? So the chassis is set up as efficiently as it possibly can be. So you take that and then you add in a quality engine program from BES, good nitrous tuning and everything else like that, and that car's just going to go right to the front, which it does all the time.
Yeah, I mean, he's got many championships, right? Yeah,
he does.
In Ultra Street. And that's like would you like to see that class be a 450 class, 440 class?
I would like to see that class like 45 to 55.
Yeah.
Like if they're going to qualify, let's say 43 being number one, right? Like we know there's a difference between racing and qualifying, right? Guys want to go out and put a number on the board during qualifying, so they have a little bit better road through elimination rounds. And you generally see those ETs back up into the 50s, high 40s and 50s during the eliminations until you get to, semis and finals. And then those guys, they know they're both in for a dogfight in those semi and
you look at
final
like
rounds.
Ducks races, for example. I think the one last year, nice cool weather at night. James Tall got a good hit in, but then come 1 o'clock noon the next day in the sun for round one, the car doesn't get down.
Right.
Because, nitrous car, you got to hit it all and hope that it gets down or else you lost anyways.
Right.
So that kind of stuff is tough.
Those midday track elimination rounds are probably some of the hardest rounds to go out and win. Mm-hmm. And you see that, right? You see hitters go out early all the time. And it's just because some of them don't know how to back it down enough to make an A to B pass in that kind of weather, or hope that the track is in a little bit better condition or that the conditions, favor them a little bit better. So
it gets tricky. I mean, SGMP and Bradenton both deal with that same thing, nightfall, great track, great air. Then the daytime, sun's beating on it and track's pretty gooey in these radial tire cars. Kind of brings into a bigger conversation, current radial tire stuff. Are we too dependent on track and glue, and I'm sure you saw it on Sick Week, the moaning about slick tires not being welcome in a way, I guess you could say.
Yeah, and
Not being catered to.
that. So that's a funny and slippery slope, right? When you think about Sick Week, because we tried that separate lane thing and whatnot, and running radials out of, let's say, the left lane and slicks out of the right lane. Well, we ran out of slick tire cars, and I still got 40 radial tire cars that need to run. So we've changed run orders. You look at the big picture and we have, let's say, AB slick goes out there and runs, or you run a bunch of D cars down early, and then you run AB slick. AB slick is a great opportunity to run behind D, right? D takes a lot of the glue with them. So it should give the slick tire cars the wheel speed they need to get down and produce good ETs, right? Then you bring an AB radio right behind them. Now your slick tires have already laid down a really nice layer of rubber down, and it gives some adhesion for the glue. It gives the radial tire cars a great surface to race on. So I think they're codependent, right? You do need some slick tire cars out there to lay some rubber.
They're dragging the track for us,
right? Exactly. Yeah. And it's kind of cool to watch those guys go down, and they're wiggling past the 330 and taking up a little bit more track room left to right as they're going down, and running over 200 miles an hour on that tire. So I don't hate slicks at all, man.
No, it's cool to see a wheelie bar on the street every now and then.
It is.
I don't care to see it at the drag strip for the most part, but when you see it on a street car, it's like, that's kind of cool.
Yep. I would, if you look at, a slick car versus a radial car. Let's say we were able to take Alex Taylor's car and put it on a set of 315s. How fast do you think she would go?
I bet she'd go 0.2 faster ET and same mile an hour.
Yep.
That would be my guess.
Yep.
And I bet you it would get right down.
And
with little adjustments.
And I think that thing would be just rock stable going down the track.
Yeah.
You've driven on both, right?
Yeah.
There's a huge difference in the feel, right? In your backside when you're going down the track. The slick just has that little sachet as you're going down there, and you're good to go. The radial, you feel like you're driving out on the highway. You feel like you're out on 75 just cruising. You can just basically lock in your elbow and
you have to.
I
mean, if that thing starts to get a little wiggly, you got to get out of it.
Yeah.
You're not driving a radial tire.
No.
People make that mistake far too often to try to drive a radial tire.
Yep.
And yeah, I mean, I'd love to see that thing on a radial. Even like Morris, put that thing on a radial.
Yep.
Get rid of the tire shake.
Right.
Stop breaking the car because of tire shake.
Yep.
I don't know. Maybe I'm biased.
Saw what you did there, man.
Maybe I'm a little biased, but I do, and I get it for Alex Taylor. She goes to a race week where the track prep is marginal.
Right.
Have different tune-ups.
Sure.
Have a different setup on the car.
Yep.
That'd probably be a lot easier. Them slick tires look heavy.
They do.
Freaking huge.
They look huge. They look heavy. And, again, how many more runs are you getting out of a 315 than you are out of a set of, 34, 14 Ws or whatever they're running on those cars, or 32 14 Ws.
Oh, my tires last forever.
Right.
I can't believe it how long they last on my deal. But I'm only going, 490s, 50s.
Yeah, but still, I mean,
it's a burnout. It's a launching it. Yeah.
Yep. And I think Dennis is smart enough to be able to figure out a converter and spring and shock package and chassis setup to get that radial to work. So
yeah, I
think that would really kind of turn some heads, especially if she was out there, competing in the iron class on a radial where everybody else is on a slick.
It'll be interesting. Nobody's hating on the slick tires, but if there's 40 of them, it's hard to do any catering to a slick tire, and only 10 of them are actually like fast.
Right.
The other ones are just like a guy that runs slick tires in like a 10 to 9 second car, which isn't crazy. You can get down a 9 second car or a 8 second car pretty easily on a radial track, I would say, in a slick tire. We're going to struggle with it here soon with I'm bringing my radials to World Series of Pro Mod. I'm not putting a slick on the car for, the one race.
Right.
I know James, I saw he's doing it for little gangsters, but Jimmy was like, I'm just going to run my radials and air them down. See how that works.
And I always find somebody saying they're going to air their radial down funny, right? What happens when you air a radial down? It starts to cup, and there's less contact batch.
That was his opinion. I don't know if I'm gonna jump in on that. I'll probably just go to like maybe 16, 17 ish, depending on the weight of your car. Some people run them pretty high.
Yeah,
it'd surprise people to know what like a LaSallo or Jim run their radial tires at.
I'm gonna say it's probably well over 20.
It's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
It's like goes against what you'd imagine so heavily. You're like, oh, you gotta air that thing way down, but it's like, no.
No, it's completely different than what you think it is. I think the amount of air they're probably using really helps with sidewall deflection and keeps the contact patch, especially because they're probably running a 12 or a 14-inch wheel on that car.
And you don't want to drive the tire into the ground and ball it up. You ruin reaction time. You ruin a ton of different things that people don't think about.
Yep.
And, some of the secrets to the tire, I guess you could say.
Oh, yeah. The tattletale is when they come off the end of the track and you see, sort of those little...
The zebra print
along the sidewall. And usually if you get about 3.5, we'll call them 3.5 zebras in there, you're probably right where you need to be as far as tire pressure goes.
And you're throwing some power at it, too.
And you're throwing some power at it. And you've got a 4-link that separates and works really well.
Yeah. That's what's interesting, too, is, I wanted to talk a little bit about the history of radial tire and the difference of how, from the BFG stuff that people were originally talking about to now, and you see these cars like still squatting and wheeling back then to now they're like working so differently.
Oh, yeah.
And you pretty much watched the whole learning process of that.
I did. I thought, back in the day, these guys would come out and front end separation was everything, and your front to rear bias was completely different than what it is now. Nowadays, people are looking at 56 and up on the nose. And that was something unheard of, back then. Corner weights and all that other business, people scaling cars and all that stuff has all come into play, right? With these spring and shock packages that people like Mensa are offering and everything else. It's really taken the game way past the tire being the limiting factor, right? Because that's why we ran the BFG back in the day, right? The tire was supposed to be the limiting factor. It was supposed to be something that you could literally leave your front door, jump in your race car, drive it to the racetrack on that tire, air that tire down a little bit, throw some smoke at it, and then go out there and make passes, go back, pump them back up again to 32 or whatever you're running on the street, and drive them home. And that's what that first BFG tire was all about. And we really prided ourselves on making that thing go down the track without all the bells and whistles and everything else like that.
Yeah.
And you look at the early days of drag radial in Orlando, and then, of course, in Memphis when they did some of the shootouts beforehand. These guys were just laying it out, and kind of just dragging the car out and then going. And their nitrous guys were trying to get it on the back tire and get the nose up and everything else like that. Where nowadays, these guys are driving the rear tire into the ground, keeping the nose down, and just almost snow plowing down the racetrack.
Yeah, I mean, you see cars like Grubworm, for instance, stick shift car, at the top end of the track, it's actually dragging the front bumper.
Yes.
At 1,200 feet.
Yes.
That's when it finally gets to like full power, full separation, and it's actually touching the bumper on the ground at 1,200 feet, which actually gets scary to a point.
Right. It's scary on both sides, right? Because back in the day, you look at some of the no prep guys, I always tease them, they look like they got stadium truck shocks on the front of these things, and they're just
some of them do
extended 14 inches, and the front tire still touching the ground. that's how we would go through the traps back then. You would go nose high.
Yeah.
And tail dragging and everything else like that. And it was just to keep it on there. Most of the cars, with limited anti-roll bar technology and shock technology and everything else like that, you were lucky if you had, 12-way single adjust shocks on the car. Very limited electronics to go along with all of that stuff. And the cars would start rocking, laterally going through the lights. There's video of Troy Perez Sr. in the Nova, and that thing is just sawing through the top end of the track, just rocking back and forth as it goes through the big end. And I don't think a lot of people understood back then, how on edge that tire was. And we get into these conversations all the time about tire technology and, how it's really advanced everything. And it has. But when people say, we need to bring it back and we need to let the tire be the determining factor. Let's let the tire. Okay, I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
How about we take Ultra Street and we get rid of the R tire and we put it on the SS tire? And the first thing people ask me, what are you trying to kill me? Well, hold on. I thought we wanted to make the tire the determining factor here. Yeah, but I'll never be able to get down. Well, maybe you just need to work on it a little bit more. And if we do this, if we put it on the SS tire, I can guarantee you the guys that are out front now will continue to be out front on that SS tire. They will find a way to make it work.
Yeah.
If we were to turn that whole thing on its head, like perfect world, get acceptance by everybody. Ultra Street on the SS tire. Let's make the tire the determining factor. Does it take away from the show? It might, right? You're going to see more people knock the tire off than ever before. But you're also going to wind up seeing some people with a lower horsepower car not knock the tire off and maybe go some rounds, maybe win some.
Well, that might be the easiest change too, because changing a turbo is tough. Like, people don't just change
It's expensive,
their turbo.
right?
It's expensive, but tires, like, you're changing them anyways, likely at some
Right.
point. The ultra guys are changing them less than like an X275 guy that gets
Right.
5 passes out of them, and he's like, all right, I'm gonna sell these to the next guy.
It's usually probably 10 passes.
Yeah. Well, just because they want that same tire and sell
Yep.
it off to the next guy. You see them for sale all through the pits. They're not just throwing them away.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, that would make it a cool deal. And then that brings in the conversation of limited 235. That is a really impressive tire. And it changes the gear ratio very heavily, which is very different than changing to the SS tire from an R tire. That's the same gearing, same size tire.
Yep.
You're talking changing transmission ratios and rear end ratios and all kinds of good stuff.
Oh, yeah.
All your bar angles change because it's so short. But that class is cool. But that class, it seemed like everybody was sandbagging in.
So that class, you look at what we've done when the DXP Street category went away.
Mm-hmm.
We combined those two. So I took it from limited 235 and DXP Street, and we got rid of the DXP part, and we got rid of the 235 part, and now it's just limited Street. So after, I think, a year of doing that, I wound up taking the nitrous cars and giving them a 255/60 R tire. So the nitrous cars are on a 255/60 R tire, which gives them a little more sidewall height and gives them a little more rollout. Boosted cars are still on the 26 8.5 Pro bracket style tire. If you're a DXP guy and you are still on the 275 SS Radial, you're still allowed to run that as in your nitrous combination. You can still run that. Nobody runs that tire except for 2 or 3 guys. It just shows that even though you've got a 275 tire, I'll take the compound of the R and the 255 or the 26 8.5 over the SS.
Yeah.
Right?
So you start to get into that, which tire, even if you have to change height, is the better compound.
Yep.
And that 235, Mickey Thompson is a really good compound tire. It's just a mini pro bracket radial, basically.
Oh, that thing's gangster. I think when they were running like this extreme 235 deal back in the day. I think somebody went 430 something, 440 something on that little tire.
Yeah, I think Devin Vanderhoof went a 50 in sick week on that tire in his Mustang.
He did. That's when he was out there clubbing baby seals.
Yeah, exactly. Now he put a adult-sized tire on that thing, but
much needed, and I applaud those guys' efforts, man. That whole windshield deal,
terrifying,
caving in, was just something else. And one of the things Josh came and told me, he goes, I sure am glad you're up my ass all the time about safety and stuff. He goes, that windshield coming in on me was scary as hell. And he goes, I thought about, all the stuff that you talk about safety wise and everything else, and how all that stuff comes into play. And, you don't think about it until it's actually, happening to you. And then you're like, God dang, I'm glad glad all this stuff is here. I'm glad I put my freaking visor down.
I try to please my friends. Put my
visor down how many videos do I have to watch of these guys? And I love these guys to death. How many videos do I got to watch of these guys with their visor up going down the racetrack?
Yeah.
It's
frustrating.
It's very frustrating. And if we can all take something away from, the windshield caving in on Josh and Devin's car.
And those micro shards of glass are serious.
Yeah.
Like that would be horrendous. I mean, you talk to somebody like Lyle Barnett. He's the visor down poster child. Basically.
He is. He absolutely is.
And like, thankfully, he's still racing.
Right.
It was scary for a while there that he wasn't going to race again. And
we didn't even know if he was going to make it, period, man, as bad as it was for him.
Yeah, that was a crazy deal. Yep. And I'm sure you were there for that.
Oh, yeah. I was, I met Lyle when he started racing X275 with his dad, in Virginia and North Carolina when we first kicked that thing off. And he might have been 17, 18 at the time. Mm-hmm. I've known him for quite some time, and to see his growth and, continued success in motorsports is pretty badass, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, now he's driving 3 cars at some events.
Yeah, he's pretty much out of breath. If somebody gets him a little gangster's ride, they just need to be kicked in the nuts, because if that guy's driving 4 cars, I think it's just going to be too much. But I bet there's somebody out there that'll offer him a ride in their little gangster car, and he will take it, and he will run 4 classes.
I heard some rumblings about beer money.
There we go. See?
Yeah, I heard some rumblings about him and Pete bringing beer money down, and I'm like, just drive your cars, dude. Like, just drive the Pro Mod and enjoy it.
No, seat time, baby.
Yeah, he's got to drive.
He's got to drive. He's got to drive.
He can't sit still.
No.
He's like Garrett in that way. It's like, if Garrett could drive a car in every class, perfect.
Yep.
But if there's downtime, bored.
Yeah.
He'll go off, like he's wandering off doing something else.
Yep.
Yeah, same deal. I'm actually really excited for Little Gangsters. I'm super happy for Jimmy, getting into World Series of Pro Mod.
Oh, yeah.
Making that happen, him in Poland. It's a good class. They got a simple rule set to make it competitive for freaking 90% of racers.
Yeah, I don't see how anybody could look at that and go, man, I don't know where I'll fit in there. Man, there's plenty of opportunity. I even was messing with the idea of bringing my Malibu down and jumping in there, and I think I could back it up and get in there pretty easily. But just trying to work an event and trying to race and everything else like that, it'd just probably be too much. But
you might need a driver for that one.
I'm sure I could get old Skeeter Wyatt to jump in there.
Yeah, exactly. He's driven it before, right?
Oh yeah. He's a good driver. He's a good driver.
It'll be interesting with the no time index. Can't break out, but you also don't know what you're doing because no slips.
Yep.
It'll be an interesting class.
No, I think that's kind of what the allure is, right? I think that's what kind of brings people in, and it gives everybody an opportunity. If you don't know how to drive the stripe, you're going to be screwed, and you better probably have 2 in the bag before you leave the line.
That's some real bracket racer talk right
there. It is. I hate even talking like that.
That's some real bracket racer stuff.
It's true though, right? Like you've got to have it. I mean, we did, we ran the 650 index stuff for a long time down at Immokalee when it was literally 275 tire, a 2810 or a 315, and it had to be a street appearance deal. Right, you couldn't bring your bracket car, your clapped out bracket car to that thing. You actually had to have a regular
So they
looking
were
street car.
show car judging as well. They
Yeah.
were not just tech. This was like appearance based deal.
Oh yeah, yeah. You couldn't bring your back half, car with 1432s to come run 650 Real Street out of Mockley at the Tomato Nationals when we first did it, and I think we had like 34 cars there.
Wow.
Running in 650.
This deal seems like there's like hundreds of cars trying to sign up. Hundreds. And, you put $10,000 on top of a 530 class, there's going to be a lot of takers.
Oh yeah.
A lot of people are going to throw their hat in there and be like, maybe.
Right.
There's going to be quite a few rounds.
I think what they're going to wind up having to do is figure out a cap. I think they're just going to have to cap it, just because there's a time limit involved, right? Like, how are we going to be able to do this? And that's, I'm going into my own event, Carolina Gold, March 7th and 8th in Shadyside. I don't know if you've ever been to Shadyside. It is probably one of the most unique, most awesome old school locations ever to hold a drag race at.
It's on my list of must attend of like tracks.
Yeah. So we are doing Little Gangsters there.
Okay.
And we're putting some money on top of that thing, and we're going to try to work in Bill Hoskinson's plates and 28s deal, local no-brainer 275, and then, of course, my limited street class will be there as well, along with a couple other classes that we've got going on. There'll be some...
They do a lot of 484 up there, right?
They do.
In that way. I didn't know if that was like... I never see it down this way. It seems like a Carolina thing.
Yeah, it's definitely Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, the 484 stuff.
So when's your event?
So mine is March 7th and 8th at Shadyside Dragway.
Oh, that's soon.
Yeah, that's coming up.
Yeah.
That's coming up. It's gonna be a lot of fun. That originally started off in Mooresville, North Carolina, years ago. We did a small block nitrous shootout there, and then that kind of grew into the Carolina Nitrous Nationals, and then Mooresville had some ownership issues and stuff like that, so we moved the event to Shadyside, and we've been there, I think, 8 years now.
Oh, wow.
So, I've gotten in good friendship with Seth and Zach Buff, and then, of course, Corey from Spooled Media is doing some stuff, and I work their Carolina Cash Days deal, that 28-inch tire deal that they've got going on, where they do 50K last year, and I think it's 75K or something like that this year.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. The amount of money that some of these events are giving to racers, not giving, but paying out to racers is awesome. It's cool to see, because drag racing needs that, and I feel like for the first time in a long time, grassroots is paying heavy.
It's come a long way, man. Like, we started X275 just running it on like a test and tune Sunday at Budds Creek and down at Virginia Motorsports Park and stuff. Like, that's how we kind of...
When did that start then?
That was like 2008, 2009 timeframe. And 8th Mile wasn't a big thing in the Maryland, Virginia area. I brought the 8th Mile stuff basically from when I lived down here in Florida, and we raced at Immokalee and things of that nature. So once you're doing that stuff and you're running basically for your own tech card money, and then you get, promoters that are like, hey, we'd love to have you, as part of this, let's put some money in. And, early days, I'm working on sponsorship packages and stuff like this to try to get people interested in doing it. And then, being new to the whole thing, I'm like, all right, I need to, let's go ahead and invoice you for this. And yeah, I'll get you the money and everything else like that. Well, come race day, I don't have the money, and I'm, basically throwing up at the ATM machine, pulling stuff out of my own savings account to cover, payouts and things of that nature there. And I don't think that a lot of people understand that there's a lot of sacrifice that goes into making stuff like this happen. And I was just so lucky to be part of this and be on the upswing of the whole Radial deal and be part of, this renewed energy that we've got going on in drag racing. I think it's just so positive for everybody. And that's all I've ever wanted to do, was move drag racing forward and get people interested and keep people coming back to the track. And that's why I often sacrifice my own racing program, and I don't care how fast I go. I really don't. My joy comes from letting go of the button and the thrill of going fast down the track and maybe getting a personal best 60 foot, or, you know, maybe we scratched out some more ET out of the car, because I'm not changing the jet in the thing. I'm just going to continue to scratch away, you know, trans and converter and whatnot.
Yeah.
So for me, it's a personal thing of getting out there and just having some fun. The competition side of things, I got caught up in the competition side of things, and it affected me financially for a little while. And I was like, man, I'm not doing this again. You know, make some better decisions here. But in the end, learning as I'm going and doing what I'm doing, you know, with the whole X275 Motorsports, we did big championship series, and, you know, we paid out, you know, $5,000 and $10,000 to X275 champions, you know, $5,000 to Ultra Street, $4,000 to Limited Street. Last year, between what myself, Jeff Salvato, and all our sponsors put in for Limited Street, I think we were over $50-something thousand for the year in total prize money for people in Limited Street.
That's awesome.
So that includes, you know, an end of year championship and things of that nature. There, these guys are racing for points, you know, and that's what I don't think a lot of people don't see that side of things, right? They're like, you know, you've got all these sponsors and all this. Listen, I'm not beating these sponsors up for $2,500, $5,000, $10,000 a pop at these events. You know, I'm trying to make it affordable for because the average business owner putting in $500 an event or $1,500 an event, that's a good chunk of money.
Yeah.
And I want to make sure that they get a return on their investment through advertising and through making sure that the decals get put on the cars and making sure that they get recognition before, during, and after the events. And I think
a lot of these sponsors chalk it up as like a donation to motorsports too.
Right.
You know, like they're like, I don't care about ROI. This is my donation to, you know, motorsports and making this event happen.
Right.
And that's an awesome way to look at it too. You know, you got your Motion Raceworks that does that kind of stuff. Like they donate to it. They sponsor a ton of events with almost no expectation of immediate ROI. They just want their name to be, you know, if you won some money, you know that your name was attached to it. Like Motion was attached to it. They're just a good example because you see their logos everywhere.
Absolutely.
SGMP, BMP, almost every event has a Motion logo at this point, it feels like.
Yep.
And it's cool to see, you know?
I think it's important, and I think that kind of passion that drives, you know, all of us to make the sport a better place, and putting your own personal feelings and ideas and everything else off and to the side in order for the greater good. I think a lot of that is why businesses are successful, right? Like Doug has a very set way in his mindset and how he sees business and how he sees business being done. And he's a big proponent of, you know, American made. He backs the veterans groups and things of that nature there. I'm a veteran myself. People want to be aligned with that kind of mindset, right? And when you see them giving back at the rate that they do, well, I'm going to go there and I'm going to go, hey man, I want to buy a set of your brakes, or I want to buy, you know, this throttle body, or I want to buy this elbow, or what have you, because of the level of support. When you've got a big faceless company out there that's also trying to get in there, but it's sort of ghost-like, right? Yeah. There's no face for the people. Would rather support a face. Doug is in the middle of things at, let's say, Sick Week, and he's down there competing, and he's down there racing and driving and everything else like that, and trying to be a part of things, where there are many companies that are not trying to be a part of things. You know, you look at Bill Hoskinson in Old Man Garage, man, and the stuff that guy does. Our whole mindset going into that Edgewater event was to promote the track and to elevate the track and to get more people to come to the track and be a part of things. There was guys that had cars that had sat 5, 8, 10 years that dusted those things off, cleaned them up, and brought them to the track.
Yeah.
Because of what Bill brings to the table. And that's the same thing with Doug. People buy stuff from Motion, from TBM because of that passion. People went to Bill's event because of his passion for motorsports and the support of Rob Wiley at the Edgewater Motorsports Park.
Yeah, it's cool to see, all of that unfold. To turn it a little bit, I want to talk about why do you think RVW fell by the wayside, but Pro Mod but Outlaw Pro Mod really blew up. And those cars are a lot of the ways the same.
Yes.
Like a Pro Mod can put some 315s on and go run RVW.
Oh yeah, certainly.
But yet there's so much money to win, yet RVW didn't explode like you would imagine it would, because there's a lot of Pro Mods.
Right.
There's a lot of people that could slap a Radial on and go run for $51,000 to win at Lights Out 16.
Yep.
That should be a full field.
You would think
it should be.
You would think so. And with the amount of Pro Mods that are out there, right? Like, what do we have? 70?
Yeah.
60 some odd, 70 something of them at U.S. Street Nationals.
And there was some that didn't even get invited to these things.
Right. Right. So if you look, there are no RVW organizations outside of what Radial Outlaws Racing Series does, right? You have, formerly you had the Northeast Pro Mod, you have Midwest Pro Mod, right? You had the NMCA had their own division of Pro Mod. You have PDRA, and you have other smaller venues that cater to slick tire Pro Mods, right? How many other groups are there out there catering to Pro Mods, RVW cars on 315s? And there's only the Radial Outlaws Racing Series that does that currently. Could it grow into something with maybe some horsepower behind it? The right individual leading the charge. Duck's a great promoter, right? But he struggles to get those RVW guys back, and I don't know if it's a matter of the Pro Mod guys just being very set in their ways. Hey, I'm a Pro Mod guy. I'll always be a Pro Mod guy. I may put radials on it and try it out, dabble in a little bit, but I'm always going to be a slick tire Pro Mod guy. And I think that's what you see. Those guys are a little bit more old school, a little more set in their ways, and there's a little more prestige tied to saying you race, Outlaw Pro Mod than there is when you tie yourself into RVW.
Interesting.
That's just my take on it.
Yeah, no, I get it. I mean, to me, Pro Mod's cool, but watching a full field of RVW Pro Mod cars would be really cool.
I think it would be insane.
That seems awesome. That racing is awesome. I love seeing the shadow on small tires going down the track because it's just cool. It's cool seeing it separate like that. It's cool seeing no wheelie bars and the big blower going down. It's just cool.
Yeah.
So I'd love to see that event take off. And I know Victor's joked about RVW being dead for many of years now, and it's unfortunate. LDR, X275, Pro 275, they're really cool, but there's just something about an all-out radial tire car. And, they go just as fast as the Pro Mods, if not faster.
If not faster, right? So think about that for a minute. Donald was talking about doing that, almost anything goes kind of deal. If you were to have a show and it was going to be based on RVW, I would be looking at 32 badass cars.
Mm-hmm.
I would do all of the racing at night, and I would do all the qualifying at night, and I would do all the eliminations at night. They wouldn't see the track, until maybe 4:30, 5 o'clock. Especially in the wintertime when it gets a little dark earlier, right?
Yeah.
At SGMP, the sun setting in the west. The front part of the track there is blocked. The sun is blocked by the grandstands and everything else like that, so you could get started there. But I think it would be a hell of a 32-car show, if you could get the people to commit, and that's, I think, part of it is how many of these Pro Mod guys are willing to make the changes necessary in order to go do that, right? What's it going to cost to change the car over? And then at that point right there, is the juice worth the squeeze?
Yeah, you'd have to have like a, a set few, whatever your setup be for RVW and Pro Mod, and you change it over. Like Stevie can change his car over because he knows what to change. He has the parts to do it, but those guys would have to figure it all out.
Yep.
And that'd be a pretty big swing for some of these guys for 1 or 2 events a year.
Yep.
If there was a series, like you're saying, like 8 events a year, 6 events a year, maybe they'd justify it.
Right.
Yeah, so I guess you'd have to figure out how to get past that barrier of that. And if anything, it's dwindling, not growing, which is, like I said, I hate to see it.
Right.
Because I want to see all out. And I love LDR. LDR is probably my favorite class. Like those cars are cars going 390s.
Yep.
Like that's a full body Nova going a 390 type of car.
Oh yeah.
But it'll never be a 46 or something,
No, and that's, you look at, guys like Frankie Taylor and stuff like that, that have run in the 40. Stevie's run 48, 49. Jason Lee, right? Didn't he go 48, 49?
I believe so.
Who else?
The Fuel Tech car.
Yeah.
They're right there.
Yeah. Lewis. And then, man, I can't think of his name. Anyway, you look at those guys, and Donald was trying to kind of pump that thing up there, and I was like looking forward to it. I was like, man, this could be one of those badass shows where people are like, holy shit, did you see that?
Mm-hmm.
And I think we see that, at World Series of Pro Mod and the Winter Series. If you weren't excited about the final round of qualifying Saturday night at the Snowbirds to watch the numbers fall and to watch the changes in the ladder and everything else and how the field tightened completely up, I don't know if you're not a drag racing fan. If that didn't get you fired up. Like there was guys I know that hadn't watched drag racing in a while, just tuned in, and they were messaging me and they were going, holy shit, dude, that was the most badass 4th round of qualifying I've ever seen in my entire life, because the ladder was constantly changing. Yep. The bump spot was changing. You've got guys that are like, yeah, man, I'm solidly in the field at, let's say 27, 26, whatever. And the next thing you know, that guy's the bump, 4 cars later because of the way things changed and everything else like that.
Well, Kai coming in as the winner as well really upped the ante on a lot of that, with this 3rd gen Camaro rolling through with the headlights on, winning Outlaw Pro Mod.
Oh, yeah.
At, what was that, at US Street? No, that was at...
No, it was at Snowbirds.
Snowbirds, yeah. And then US Street, unfortunately, rattled the tires.
Right.
A couple hundred feet out, which happens.
It happens, right?
Part of it, heat of the day, track's a little different, rattled the tires, and, that car just set the tone for it was going to be a cool event in a lot of ways. And then, obviously, Ken Cartuccio's a bad man behind the wheel.
That guy...
He went 0-0 almost every pass in the finals.
He made a statement that Drag Illustrated posted up that when he does well, semis or runners up at Snowbirds, he wins U.S. Street Nationals. And he went out there and he did exactly that. His driving was impeccable. The crew had the car turned around, and they gave him a great race car every round to go out there and win. And that's what it took, man. You're up against some of the hardest hitting competition in motorsports out there, World Series of Pro Mod and the Winter Series. You can't look at a 32 car field, at 0.06 separation.
Yeah, I mean, that's a crazy separation. That is insane to have 32 cars of any caliber,
right?
No matter how fast or slow they are, to be 0.06 separating the number 1 spot from the number 32 spot. Right. And you could probably even go farther down how, the people that didn't get in, what they were separated from.
Oh, yeah.
Being insane.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. When you're having to go out, 4 places or 3 places, and then you have to look at mile an hour in order to separate some of these cars on the ladder and figure out where they're at in qualifying. I don't know what else can be done to make it any better than what it is. The fact that we've gotten some great press out of the Kai Kelly win, and out of Ken's win, at U.S. Street Nationals, especially, like I said, I think the guy called his shot. I think that was just gangster.
Yeah.
And he's a great guy to boot, right? Like Ken is a really good guy to boot. Great family, everything else like that. Great team, and was given an opportunity to go over there and race, and that guy has taken it for all it's worth. I mean, he won an NHRA event this year too. I mean,
well, even Lyle said, it was Ken's to win. I was just in his way.
Right.
And Lyle's not somebody like
No.
we just talked about. He'll get you on the tree. He'll do his job as a driver pretty much 99.9% of the time.
Yep.
And he did, but it was just Ken's to win, and he drove out on Lyle. Lyle didn't have a tune-up to run with that deal.
Right.
I think he went like a 58 in the finals or
Right.
something, right? Like Ken it was a pass every time.
No, they were not being shy about tuning that car up and making sure it was going to be in the winner's circle for sure.
Yeah, it was cool. So what's your take on like a pro front wheel drive on, some kind of like different element to maybe either get more people involved, more spectators involved, more different crowd?
Talking about like an extreme front wheel drive, like we brought them in that one year.
Yeah, but then also there was the pro front wheel drive from back in the day that were really crazy. They were like big tire front wheel drive cars.
Right.
But
Right.
no cars like that exist, so you can't really have a class for that.
I think if we could get the extreme front wheel drive cars, and this is not a knock on those guys, to stay together, right? That's my favorite front wheel drive class is extreme front wheel drive.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've teched those guys at multiple events. I'm familiar with most of them. At FL2K and at the reunion, and we also had them at World Series of Pro Mod a while back. And if there was a way that we could keep those cars together, I think the racing's off the charts.
Yeah, and it's a slick tire car, so it fits in at World Series of Pro Mod pretty
Right.
well. Like another slick tire class, completely different,
Yep.
completely different people. None of them are switching over into, 10.5. Like it's not like somebody's moving classes.
Right.
That's a whole different car guy
Yep.
altogether.
Right, and a different fan base, right? So if you can expose the fan base of extreme front wheel drive to Pro Mod, and Pro Mod guys and spectators and fans get exposed to extreme front wheel drive, and they're like, man, those little cars haul ass. This is pretty cool. The problem became that there was some breakage and some oil downs and stuff like that.
Some.
and I think it kind of hurt,
Yeah.
them in the long run, where maybe if we would have slowed them down a little bit, maybe put them on an 8.0 bump or something, so they're not trying to hang the rods out of the thing every time. Keep them alive and keep them going rounds and keeping them paired up and everything else like that. Maybe that goes a little bit.
I wonder if just
along
not
the
even
way.
running them out the back too.
Yeah,
Like, it's an 8th mile event. I know they're normally used to
right.
pouring the power in after the 8th mile, but it would change their strategy.
Sure.
Run them short track. They'd probably stay together a lot better.
Oh yeah,
And maybe not. Maybe they'd find a way to blow them up earlier.
right.
Probably.
What do they go? 5:30 to the 8th?
Yeah.
Huh? Little gangsters.
I mean, it's interesting, because there's definitely a conversation to be had there with bringing them back, and maybe they just didn't think that the fan base showed up enough to justify it. But it also brings in different sponsors. It brings in different racers. It seems like a good deal all around.
Does.
It just that first one probably left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouths.
Yeah, I think it hurt more than it helped, and I think that's kind of sad because as somebody gets to work the World Cup, I get exposed to all those guys, and I know a lot of those guys, and I know they were really they felt proud that they were asked to come there and race and be a part of things, because it was pretty much it was an honor to be able to be part of that. And I know that each and every one of them wanted to put on a better show than what they did.
I know I talked to Wade after the event, and he said that it was the first time he's ever seen full engines in trash cans.
Yeah.
He was like, I've never seen like an actual full engine in half in a trash can before that deal. Like, because the Pro Mod guys don't throw them in the trash like that.
No, they don't.
They may chuck a rod, but they're welding them back together.
They're welding them back. Yep.
Those things can be pretty worn out before you're like, all right, no more billet block. We got to get a new one.
Right. You send it back to Proline, re-sleeve it. It'll be fine.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, even you go to Top Fuel, and I looked over at Clay Milliken's pit last year, and there was, sleeves. Just the full trash can was filled with sleeves.
Yep.
But it's funny at Top Fuel because the souvenirs that people end up with.
Oh, yeah. People are digging in the trash for that kind of stuff, man, and having Clay
tires.
sign it. And yeah, man, you see him all the time, and it's pretty wild. The whole pro event, were you able to go to the pro event last year?
I went last year. I didn't end up going this year.
Yeah, I didn't go this year. Did go last year. It was an impressive event, and it was great to see, Bradenton Motorsports Park back on the map with Top Fuel cars and funny cars and pro stock cars. Because that's something that's been long missing from the venue. So it was awesome to see that, they've 2 years now. We've had Top Fuel cars and funny cars and pro stock cars racing at Bradenton, which is just crazy.
Me and Jimmy were just talking about it, and he was like, I don't care about all that stuff because, he's like a street guy, yellow belly guy. They tend to not care about Top Fuel, but I was like, yeah, but like a nitro baptism every now and then is pretty great.
There's something to be said for hanging out on the fence line at about 300 feet when two of those cars go by.
Yeah.
It's pretty intense.
And me and Derek Putnam were talking about it too, because he's like, yeah, like I go all the time at Gainesville and like, for the Gator Nationals. I'm like, yeah, but like Bradenton, you're close. You're like, the stands are right there. They had to move the scoreboards out when they were planning to run it. Like Gainesville, you're far. You're far from the starting line no matter where you are in the stands. But BMP, you're never far. You're 20 feet away at some points. It feels like in the stands.
Absolutely, it's such a unique feeling, right? Like standing on the starting line when you've got two screw blown pro mods leaving the starting line. Mm-hmm. If you've never stood there in the starting line, then when that's happened, you're missing out. I'm just blessed to be able to do stuff like that on occasion. But if you're an average fan and I took you on a starting line, gave you some ear protection and brought you out there, you'd feel it, and it would be something that would stay with you for a long time. And I think that's the same thing that people get from the fuel cars, right? Bradenton being the venue that it is, like you said, it's close. It's a little more intimate than what Gainesville is or Indy is or any of those, larger venues. I think it brings the fan experience into a whole new level.
Yeah, and it's even like one of those deals I try to tell people, same thing with Pro Mod, like try to experience it from different spots. Like go stand at the 600-foot cone.
Yep.
Because when those things are coming right at you with the blades open and you see the blades open, you basically see the driver's eyes because you're not far. And those things scream by you at like 9,000 RPM. It's cool.
Yeah.
You got to bounce around and experience it from different spots. And even like at the top end when you see him shutting down with the chutes out is cool.
Yep.
Like that's a cool experience too. You see the photographer standing there, and that's a cool spot to watch it all happen.
Oh yeah. Plus, you look at the shutdown area, right? And these guys are flying. Sometimes chutes aren't coming out in a timely manner or what have you. And it gets a little dicey down there. And these guys handle it, like the true professionals they are. You rarely see anybody mess up down there when there's a chute issue or the brake malfunction or whatever. These guys are just, they're some of the best behind the wheel as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I mean, at Pro, I think Antron lost a tire. Like
he did?
Not just spun a tire like we're talking about in like a Radial car. Like he lost a tire.
Yep, completely
blew it
disintegrated.
apart.
Yep.
And rode that thing out on the wheel, kept it together. I think it was a Top Fuel car, so they stay pretty straight. They're that length of a car is hard to really spin around or anything like you'd imagine our deals. But yeah, I mean, it's just cool to see.
It's a big part of the Top Fuel experience is that visceral feeling you get in your chest when they go roaring by, and I think I think if people haven't experienced that, that's something that, if they are a motorsports fan, that's one thing that you definitely want to experience at least once or twice in your life.
Yeah. So, who do you think would be on like your Mount Rushmore of radial tires racers? Like the guys that their names on there for permanently on the sport. Because there's a few, and you would know better than me. And how early you go back, how.
I'll go back. The first name that comes to mind is Big Daddy, Dwayne Guthridge. That guy was synonymous with radial tire racing. He basically on the Ford side of things and in mainstream media, so to speak, brought that radial tire to the front. People didn't know about it, right? Everybody was a slick tire racer, right? Yeah. Super Street Outlaw, back in the NMRA days, their heyday, 2810. That was the only thing people cared about, 2810. Well, Dwayne's over there hauling ass on a radial tire when you weren't supposed to. That's the guy that I look at as being at the forefront of radial tire racing, like the racer, right? So like he's the guy. Promoter wise, if I'm looking at stuff, what Duck has done with what started out as the Outlaw Tire Radial Championship was an Outlaw Radial Tire Championship with an ORTC deal that he started down in Bradenton with Alan and them, and what it's grown into with Lights Out, No Mercy, Thrones, now a whole series with the Radial Outlaws Racing Series, that kind of thing right there. He's got to be up there. Just the sheer volume of cars that have raced those events. Like if you were to look at it individually, right?
Yeah.
Like take all the names that have ever run RVW, like strictly RVW, and all the names that as individuals ran Pro 275 and LDR, and you start putting that together. All the people that have ever ran an X275 race, maybe they only ran one, but they need to be on that list. How many people are there? How many people ran Ultra? How many people ran DXP Street? That's a lot of people.
Yeah.
That's a lot of people. That's a lot of people to keep interested in a certain genre of racing. And people come and go all the time, right? And we see people that, stick in there. Ron Rhodes, that guy
just ran every season.
That guy's just amazing, right? You see Stevie Fast, right? He's been in there. So it's Donald's, deal with Lights Out and the ORTC stuff and Radial Outlaws Racing Series. Those are those kind of things there that, he's got to be right there next to Dwayne because of how things have come up. The other side of it is I have to put sort of a two-headed deal up there or just a manufacturer up there, and that would have to be Mickey Thompson. What Tommy told me was, I'm going to completely mess up X275, and I'm going to develop a tire that is going to do things that you don't think are possible.
When did he tell you this?
Right before they developed the Pro tire.
So like 11?
Yeah, probably 10, 11.
Okay.
Right around in there, because we were still running the old style 3754R Mickey Thompson tire, which is basically what the SS is now. And then they were running on the Hoosier DR1 before the Mickey Thompson 275 Pro.
So he told you this was about to come out, and then...
There's a reason why the part number for the Pro tire is 3754X.
Interesting.
Yep, that's where that came from, because it was specifically designed to be running X275.
That's cool. So the class that you created inspired that tire, which now is synonymous with drag racing.
Yes.
I mean, we can talk about Sick Week again, where there was probably 340 cars on that tire or something of similar compound.
Right.
Some kind of Mickey of similar compound. That's
Yep.
cool.
Pro Bracket 28 and the Pro 275 are almost identical.
And is it
The
Tommy
compounds.
Thompson? Is it?
No,
okay.
Tommy Kundrick at Mickey Thompson.
Okay.
So he's no longer there with them. Jason Moulton is now with them, and I know Jason was on the development team as well with that. So Dwayne, Duck, and Mickey Thompson. That's my three.
That's a solid, Mount Rushmore of, the whole deal.
And I think if I'm gonna really look back into maybe somebody that would like be inspirational or be a part of the whole racing thing, and that's been with it for a long period of time, I would put Ron Rhodes up there. And I say that, and that's not a knock on any other racers or anything else like that. It's just that guy has put his heart and soul into this like everybody has. He has been successful with a nitrous small block car, both on the 8th mile and the quarter mile, right? He set records in the 8th mile. He set records in the quarter mile. He's now moved to a big block combination, and he's done really well with that as well. He sits at the number 2 spot, and he's last year's champion in RORS. So that's my 4.
The fact that he's never missed a season is mind-blowing.
Yeah.
He has never had his car down where he's like, oh, I'm gonna get it ready for next year. He hasn't missed a season racing that deal.
Yep.
And it's tough to do now, especially now because there's races all over the country, and you can't take the winter off if you live up north. Can't take the summer off if you live in Florida. You just gotta kind of hope you can make little tweaks,
right,
and keep it rolling.
Think about it. That's the car he drove to high school in.
Yeah.
That's a car that's been in numerous magazines, numerous e-articles and things of that nature there. It still has some of the original paint that Ron first put on it and the pinstripes on it and things of that nature. Still got the original steering wheel that he put on it years ago.
I found that pretty funny.
So if you look at that, that is a guy that is just lives, eats, sleeps, breathes what we do. And it's also his business, right? So not only is a guy running a business, but he's also racing at an extremely high level, and he's done it for a long period of time. And I hate saying just Ron, because there's so many other great racers out there that have run radio racing, right? Yep. Like there's so many great racers. But I look at Ron and I look at X275, and they're synonymous. And so that's why Ron is my pick for that position.
Absolutely. I mean, when I think of X275, his car is definitely one that nitrous flames out, wheelie, that kind of comes to mind when I'm like X275.
Yep.
Ron Rhodes' car.
Absolutely.
It's just like the two are forever intertwined. And even when you talk about radial racing, there's been some amazing clips and videos and moments that have come out from it. I'm thinking of I'm blanking on his name. Slavens, Tim Slavin's
car,
where his car is fully in the air.
Yes.
Like it is higher than the first scoreboard number, basically.
Yes.
At 700 feet
easily,
and it's just flying through the air. And unfortunately, Tim's no longer with us. Right. It wasn't due to that; it was a later thing. But the car was just flying through the air, and it was like a steel-bodied car. Like it was heavy, and it just worked. Always one of those cars that I think about was just awesome.
Yep, that's like that crossover car, right? Had a little bit extended wheelbase, like an RVW car, but it wasn't quite a Pro Mod, right? Like it's just a badass steel roof and quarter car.
It was like an NPK car kind of before NPK.
Yep, exactly.
On a small tire.
Exactly.
And the NPK cars are unique in that way too.
Oh, for sure.
There's a lot of them, and they don't really fit great into anything else. I mean, Kai won, of course, but not all NPK cars would be able to do that.
Kai's driving and Jeff Pierce's tuning and preparation, led to, an extremely successful outing at Snowbirds. And I think those guys are going to come in loaded for bear and ready to go for World Series of Pro Mod coming up here.
Yeah, I think being able to pull out a second win in the Winter Series would be big.
Yep.
Him and Ken obviously are the only ones that have the opportunity to do that now.
Right.
To have 2 wins at the Winter Series.
Oh yeah.
They're the only ones, and this is the biggest payout.
And the fact that they faced off against one another, and if you go back and you look at the incrementals of the run in the finals between Ken and Kai, had everything stayed aligned in Ken's lane the way it needed to, that was going to be one hell of a drag race. I think they had a parts failure or something.
Yeah.
Just past at 330. But if you look at the incrementals, the reaction time, the 60-foot, the 330, it was going to be crazy out the back.
I'm sure Jeff Pierce has been looking at every single thing like that.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if Kai does. He probably just lets go of the button a little bit more.
No, I think Kai is actually pretty active because we, my business had the contract to do tech at NPK last year. And we got to know those guys pretty good. And Kai is knee-deep involved in everything, in every aspect of that car, along with Sunshine and the new Kid Puddin' and stuff like that. They're good kids, man. They work their ass off, and you can tell Kai, Puddin', and Sunshine, they're very tight-knit and really lean on Jeff a lot, but also very capable on their own.
Definitely. And, I more just say that by, I don't know how, deep Kai gets into looking at everyone else and the crazy incrementals like that, because he's also used to NPK where you don't have those incrementals to look at. But I'm sure like a tuner like Jeff is thinking, you got to think about every last bit on that deal.
Absolutely.
You got to squeeze everything out of it, it's cool. It makes it exciting.
It does.
So this may actually not work, but what do you know about NPK?
What do I know about NPK?
This may not work because I'm assuming you know things that aren't public yet.
So I know that the people that I work for have contacted me about working this year again.
That's a good sign.
And that's a good sign. There's going to be some wrinkles and some changes and some things going on over there. I think last year was a year for them to take a deep breath and reset because they hit it pretty hard, right? And the schedule is just causing these guys to drive all over God's creation.
They were very bad about that. They'd be like Vegas, then North Carolina, then back to California, then like New York, and it's like, whoa, you guys can't zigzag across the country like that.
Well, a lot of it is due to track scheduling, right? Your hand is almost forced sometime on how you do this and where you go, and you don't want your fan base overlapped in any one of those things. Common sense says, you come down to Florida, Georgia in the wintertime, and you have something at Bradenton, Orlando, or SGMP or something like that, right? And then maybe you move up into somewhere in North Carolina, and as the weather starts to get better, maybe you move back down towards Alabama somewhere, and then you can go to somewhere else as the springtime hits, maybe up in PA, Maple Grove or something like that, and then move over to maybe Norwalk or 131 in Michigan, and then sort of loop back around through the states.
So you are under the assumption, though, that they will be filming a 2025 season.
That is what I understand. I don't know.
That's what I've heard from racers.
What it looks like. Again, they have asked if I'm willing to work their events again and be a part of it, and I said absolutely.
Interesting. So it does look like my only worry was like they had big network money. They were paying these drivers very healthy amounts of money to show up at races, which is unheard of in drag racing. There's not appearance fees in Pro Mod.
Right.
So it was interesting for that aspect, and it's worrying. It's like, how do you make that happen still? How do you keep that going? Because these guys had badass cars because of the merch and the appearance fees and the TV stuff. it kind of needs that. It needs the both. It can't just survive as just a regular fill the stands and, get some sponsor dollars in.
Right. Right.
It needs the big money.
It does. It does. And if you look at what they did last year, they were YouTube Live and some things of that nature there. And I don't know what the numbers and the demographics look like for all that stuff.
Yeah.
But I think it was pretty successful. In looking at the future, definitely something along the lines of what they did before at Discovery is, but with the shakeup at Motor Trend, with the whole, getting bought out and everything else like that, and what it's done for stuff like Roadkill and Roadkill Garage and all the other different genres that have come out of Motor Trend there, and how it kind of really affected a lot of people with the new ownership at Discovery, and Street Outlaws, has also fallen victim to that, right? Where they don't have that same backing. So what do? Do you go to somebody like Hulu, or you go to Netflix or something like that, and you offer that kind of thing up, and how much are they willing to get, as far as sponsorship dollars and stuff like that. But I think what they showed at Discovery was that it's a very successful business model as they were working with Discovery. So if you can sort of capture that lightning in the bottle and bring it over to Hulu, Netflix, what have you, as far as a streaming service, is that going to be the way to go, or do you need it back on basic cable where everybody's pretty much exposed to it, because not everybody has streaming service available?
For sure. And people might even get annoyed why you talk about NPK. I will stand on the fact that it was a serious race with very serious cars, real drivers. Like, it was badass. Like, whether the show or not, who cares?
Right.
The actual racing and the heads-up racing that these guys did with the caliber of cars was actually very badass.
It was.
Very close racing, good drivers, serious tuners. Like, it wasn't just like, they're probably going 70s, 370s, 380s-ish. If you were to guess, I could speculate. Maybe, they're going fast. They're not.
No, they're
not going 490s.
They're not a bunch
here.
of punks out there going, 490s or what have you.
Yeah.
They are literally running Pro 275, Pro Mod, RVW style combinations in their cars. And the racing surface helped, keep some of that parity there. And that's why some of the changes and stuff like that in the rules packages, when you look at what their rules package is versus, let's say, a Pro Mod or an RVW deal, that's why there's some changes in there. And it's because the racing surface dictated those changes.
Yeah. I got to pee 1 second. So what is the hardest combo to tech then? Turbo stuff, nitrous guys, class combo, what?
I think turbos are the hardest to tech. I think there's just so many nuances within a turbocharger, and it just creates a lot of problems.
Yeah.
I ran Buick Grand Nationals back in the day. Familiar with turbochargers really well. Watching what manufacturers do these days, or what they're capable of doing, and what you call a 76 millimeter, what you call an 88 millimeter, and now you've got 88 millimeter turbochargers in Pro Mod that outperform the 98s. So how do you it's the problem is there's never any sort of set rules, right? When you say, all right, this is the spec for the turbo, it's got to be this. It's going to measure here, going to measure there, well, then they find another area where they go ahead and they start throwing wrinkles at you. So then you've got to change the way the rule is written, and you've got to address what they've got going on in there. Oh, you guys didn't address this. We're going to go ahead and do this. Doesn't say we can't. And that to me, sometimes comes down to just not being very honorable as far as, presenting your stuff.
Yeah, so it's kind of like, gray area racing, but also like you're just cheating.
Right.
Like there's a level where it's like you're just cheating.
Right.
And cheating's funny in racing because if you give it 5 years, people respect it, but in the moment they hate it.
Right.
But you look at people like Smokey Unick cheated everywhere and then writes a book and everybody's like, that's the coolest thing ever.
Right.
Everybody that raced with him was probably like, I hate that guy.
Right.
Because we all know he's cheating.
Right. We want to take him out behind the woodshed and beat him with a log, you know?
But you give it enough time and people are like, oh, that's cool.
Right.
You got away with that.
Well, I mean, so the level of thought that goes into making these changes, right? These engineers that design the turbochargers and everything else like that, they're brilliant, right? They understand airflow and how all of that affects and power output and where the power comes from and how it comes in and all those different things, right? And, you know, here we are, we're, you know, trying to tech 400 cars or 300 cars, what have you. And you're trying to be very diligent in what you do, but you're also not trying to take up somebody's time in tech to the point where you've got the guy's car in pieces over there.
Yeah.
And you still don't find anything. Everything meets the spec and everything else like that. And of course, with social media being what it is today, you know, people put their own spin on shit. And no matter what you say from the beginning, right? Like somebody can go out and say, you know, X, Y, Z, and you can have facts and detailed arguments to go, that's not how that is. Because that person said it first, everybody's going to accept that. And what all you're trying to do here by responding to it is some sort of damage control because you missed it or you screwed up. And that's the only reason why you're addressing this right now. And I think that's the hardest thing that I face all the time is when you write a rule set and you send it to a manufacturer and you go, this is what we're looking for in this particular part. And they go, okay. Now, people behind the scenes know that you've done this, right? But the general Joe doesn't know you do that. So he puts it out, oh, yeah, you know, he sent the specs to you know, so-and-so company, but he didn't send it to so-and-so. How do you know that? How do you know that?
Yeah.
Because you got a buddy that works over here and he showed it to you? And because it didn't CC 5 other different companies on there, I sent them out individually to these companies.
And it's also like, well, only a few companies make this legal turbo. So, like,
right.
Why send it to everyone? They're
right.
not even in the conversation.
Right,
like,
right.
They don't even make a turbo.
But because he says that,
yeah,
that's taken as gospel, and people run with it, and they will burn you to the ground over something that they have no knowledge of.
Well, I think about, like, World Cup tech, again, to bring up, like, people take apart their whole cars to get the turbo. Like, it's not like a simple deal. Like, you know, X275, all the turbos are pretty easy to get to.
Yep.
Some of these cars at World Cup, they're low-mounted, they're trans-mounted, they're in spots where it's like, it's hard to take them to where you can measure the inducer and exducer.
Oh, yeah.
Inducer, a little easier. Exducer, often that's like a whole disassembly.
Right. How are you getting that compressor cover off on that GTR?
Yeah. Stock location turbo.
Stock location turbo.
Good luck.
Right. Right.
Can't even see it. Even jack the car up, you can't really see it.
No, you can't. And that's why you just write, you know, compressor inducer.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and you stick your arm way down in there and you figure it out and then you go on, you know. And that's the rules there allow us to do things like that, right? And we know packaging is just brutal on some of these cars.
Yeah.
So you have to have some common sense when you write the rule. All right, this is the only thing you're allowed. Boom. Done. Because you know the rest of it is what it is at this point.
Well, even like the CTSV at World Cup, you probably saw. I mean, it was fully apart to get.
I made him take it apart.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like that thing was fully apart, and like not your fault that he has to take his car apart to get to the turbo. My car, I could have it out in 5-10 minutes probably.
Right, right.
Just the nature of it.
Right.
And then there's Mustangs that have by the transmission, and it's like because you can't drive it up once that's all apart.
No, no, you can't. You can't. What do? You tow it up with things and pieces? Yeah. You know, you've seen us. We've been literally under cars on our backs in the staging lanes doing tech at World Cup, tools out, jack stands, jacks, everything else like that, trying to get to these turbochargers to take a look at them.
Yeah, and World Cup's a tough one because these guys, like, they got to get to that. They got to race. Like, that event is built as a show.
Yes.
Where these cars need to race. You can't just be like, well, sucks.
Right.
Like, you got to get under it and actually figure it out.
Yeah. It's, we had, which one did you guys bring from Cletus's camp up there? And they're like, we got to take them both apart? And I'm like, yeah, we got to take them both apart. Let's take them both. Come on. Let's get the covers off. And we did. We got the covers off and everything else like that. And then we band them all up. And
yeah. Well, they had the El Camino there, and they had that car's more of an X275 car, but, like, also not.
Yeah.
Eagle.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Eagle's a Pro 275 car.
Yeah, Pro 275 car, but also not quite. Where would you say that thing
No, that's
falls?
definitely a Pro 275 car.
But not competitive, I guess, at the moment.
At the moment, but I think it can be.
It needs a lot more to be competitive.
Right,
yeah.
right.
So it fits Pro, but it needs a bunch.
Right.
It needs to be really dialed in for Pro, which is hours of work.
Yeah,
days.
and that's not something that's something you take it to the Fuel Tech Hub dyno, and you get all that side of it scienced out, and then you guys, he doesn't have to rent a track. He just tells Wade to make sure that the lane's prepped properly, and he brings all his guys in, and that was one of the things that we initially did with those guys is we went out and we measured the wheelbase on the car. And what do we have to do? We had to make changes to the wheelbase on the car in order to get it to conform and fit the class properly.
Forgot that you said it was too long.
Yeah.
And it's like,
right. I'm sorry. And we had another car.
Cole Cameron.
That we were like, wheelbase is too long. He goes, well, I'm almost at the end of the adjustment for my 4-link. I can't shorten it up anymore. And I'm like, well, you're going to have to make some new bars. I'm like, I can't let you go out there, with the wheelbase being like this. What'd they do? Found a local shop, fabbed up a bunch of new bars, got some Heims, put everything all together, got the wheelbase where it needed to be, and then they were legal.
Well, I remember we were flying up to World Cup, and I was like, why is there drive shafts here? I'm like, well, shorten it up a little.
Shorten it up a little. Right. That's one of those things, like when you come out there, and I really think that car can be competitive, and I think that
it's just a time thing and a work thing.
Right. I think it would go a long way for Garrett and those guys over there at Freedom Factory if he fielded a competitive car in a class like Pro 275 or LDR or something like that. I think it would sort of really level up his legitimacy in the heads-up world. And I know that's one of the things that he's been working on.
Well, he's got the car for it now.
They've
it's got the motor, it's got the turbos, it's got everything needed. It wasn't something that like, oh, we can run this.
Right.
It's not like, oh, I fit this. Like, it's built for this.
Yes.
You just have to dial it in.
Yep.
Like, you have to get 10 trans ratios, maybe 14 different converters, and 5 different rear end options before you get it there, but it might get there. It'll get there.
And then figure out the stators and oh, wait a minute, now it's the heat of the day. We gotta loosen up the stator to get the car to work a little bit better. Can't be so aggressive now. The track isn't quite where it is. We gotta change the stator. Or, take the tractor fluid out of it and put something a little bit lighter in there that's gonna loosen up the converter.
Yeah. I've actually, I need to push him a little bit more, but I think honestly he needs to hire a crew chief. Somebody that's just dedicated to one, like the car at the track at the moment, and like a final say on shock adjustments, and like, because it's a lot of car to not have like a dedicated crew chief that knows everything. And like Zach's awesome. Zach knows a lot, but if he's not the final say, then
that's where I think a day with Jamie and Johnny Miller at the racetrack would be huge, because those guys can set the car up.
Yeah.
Then they can tune it, and they can stay on top of it, and they can help him move in that right direction.
I guess at that rain delay at US Street, they were at his shop for like 8 hours, just changing things.
Yep.
Like, this is wrong. This needs to be moved. This, that, measuring this. I don't
So
fully
he did have
understand.
them over there?
Yeah.
Yes,
But
that's
of
huge.
course, they were probably like, yeah, we need another, like, now let's take it to the track 10 times.
No, I think it would probably be 2 days at the track.
2 days, you think? I know they're pros. I know. And that car has everything right.
Right.
Cameron, I fully trust that Cameron built that deal right.
Right.
And the car would be awesome to see as a contender in pro.
Oh yeah.
It'd be cool.
I think it would. He's got such a big target on his back, right? With the haters out there sometimes, and they're like, oh, it's just Garrett, and he's not going to be competitive, or he's just doing this for clicks and this, that, and the other thing. And I really think him building a car that caliber, and then, well, now like you say, he's got Jamie and Johnny over there looking at the car and things of that nature there. I think that'll quiet a lot of the chirping that's going on.
Yeah.
And really show people, he's vested in what he's got going on. It's another thing. He's been successful at so much, right? Why wouldn't he be successful at jumping into that deep end of the pond with those
Absolutely.
Pro 275 killers?
Absolutely. And it could definitely get there. And it'd be cool to see. So what's your thought on that thing out the back? What was your take on that?
What, as far as a quarter mile?
Because, it did it at World Cup, and yeah, the radial tire quarter mile record maybe sounds cool to some, but I think people don't realize how few people are actually trying for that.
Right.
Because, like, Stevie Fez could just not dump the chutes and probably,
Yeah.
what I mean, roll through the
But
traps.
I mean, in a somewhat stock appearing car, I think it's a greater achievement.
Yeah.
Right?
Because right now it's the 4th gen, blanking on his name, but the black 4th gen that races at World Cup has the radial tire record at like a 550.
Yeah, that's Benston. Mark
Benston, yep. He has it right now, and obviously Garrett's car can well surpass the horsepower that thing makes.
Right.
Should be able to do it, but again, running those tires out the back is not what they're rated for.
No, and years ago, often we watch chute mounts that aren't rated for the weights.
So let's do
and
it.
The speeds. We watched Kevin Fiskus, rip the chutes off his Mustang at World Cup twice. We've watched Jeff Lutz.
His GTO did it.
And the GTO had the chutes come off. So there's all these, the weight variables and the mile an hour, and then actually getting the car stopped. And that's one of the beauties of Jason Miller's facility there and Royce Miller's facility at Maryland. The shutdown is huge. Gives you guys an opportunity to get that thing slowed down. But, if you've ever had an opportunity to hang out on the top end like we do and see some of the shit that we see, it's pretty wild watching these cars come through, especially some of the front-wheel drive cars when the ass end gets lifted off the ground and they're going through on the front tires with the chute blossomed and the rear tire off the ground or skipping along. And
we were watching that, I think we were at the scoreboards. I don't know how far exactly that is down at there, probably at the quarter mile. But this Honda Civic came by on its roof.
Yeah.
Swoom, right through the traps on the roof. I was like, okay.
Yep. It happens, dude. The thing is there's so many eyes on that race, and people put so much pressure on themselves to go out there and be the man. And oftentimes, some people outdrive their ability.
I would like to see, maybe this is speaking out of turn, but there is a bump. I would like to see that addressed a little bit more. You know what I'm talking about at 300 feet, 200 feet-ish in the left lane. There is a bump, and you've seen it on settle cars, and we've seen cars with the shocks topped out hit that bump, and the drivers talk about it. They're like, you can see it in our shock data.
Oh, yeah.
There's a bump.
Yeah.
You tune around it.
Yeah.
But maybe that's just part of it.
Yeah, you clip 3 degrees out of it and settle it down. And
yeah. It happened to the yellow Mustang. It happened to White Rice. I think he kind of got caught up in it a little bit. Lighter cars are definitely more prone
to get
unsettled.
Yep.
But yeah, it's definitely a worry. And if they don't know that it's there, the drivers get hung up.
I can't say that they do or they don't, but I know that I've heard people, say, hey, listen, my dad is not lying to me. Every time I go down the left lane, it gets unsettled right here. So we have to make an adjustment in the tuning window to allow the car to continue to go down that lane. And if we're going to race in that lane, now I'm hindered by having to take a little bit of power away to get through that section of the track.
Yeah. I don't think Brett made a pass in the right lane. I mean, in the left lane the entire
Probably
time. Because he just chose, if
Right.
you know,
Yep.
why would you pull up into the right
Well,
lane?
so the whole thing is this is they're supposed to be monitoring and they're supposed to be flip-flopping lanes. And that's one of those things, it's funny that you bring that up, the one-lane racing. We often, at like sick week, we're at the front of the staging lanes and we're directing people where to go. And oftentimes, you try to get somebody to go into the left lane and they're like, they just go to the right on their own. Well, now I got to stop everything, right? Because the lady in the tower's already got that guy's number entered into the left lane.
Yeah.
And they get really pissy about that. And I'm putting you in the left lane because she saw you were going to be the first car out. I told her you were going to the left lane. She's already entered you into the left lane, and I've given her the number to the car behind that's going to go in the right lane. And when you decide to be a Burger King and have it your way, and you go to the right lane, now I got to stop everything, and she's got to reconfigure the computer.
Yeah.
But people don't understand that. They just think that we're being mean and we're directing them into the lane that we just want them to arbitrarily go into.
And on like a sick week, all right, some people probably could get a pass because like they're trying to really do something. But the
Right.
people that are like, you could go down in either lane.
Yep.
Relax.
Right.
Like, what's the problem here? If you can't see the tree because you're in the right lane, that you need to figure that out.
Right.
Personally.
Right.
You know what
Right.
I mean?
But it's a hard thing to get people to understand, right? Like, I'm not doing this because I'm trying to be a jackass and I'm trying to use my position to force you to do something that you don't. It's not what I'm trying to do. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to help the flow.
Yeah.
And we're trying to keep things moving and everything else like that. If your crew guy comes up and goes, hey, man, we really want to make sure that we get down this time. We've only had success in the left lane today. Can we have the left lane, please? You know what I'm going to say? Man, I'm going to do everything I can to get you down in that left lane. Mm-hmm. But if you just pull up and you don't say anything to me and I direct you to the right lane and then you go to the left lane, now I got a problem. Because now I got to walk out there. I got to stop you. I got to stop the guy behind you. Got to back you up. I got to put you in the right lane because she's already entered you. And it just really causes chaos and confusion that doesn't actually need to happen if there's some level of communication between the teams and us.
Interesting.
It's not a willy-nilly thing. That's why we always try to pull one lane and direct them either right or left initially. It's because it's easier for the girl in the tower to see the numbers on the car, to get them entered and everything else. And I don't think a lot of people understand that part of it.
Yeah, that there's actual like something that has to happen in the tower. It's not just automatic.
Right.
It's not just like you break the beams, you get your slip. Like
Right.
It says your car number on it.
Right.
On the slip. You think that's just magic?
Yeah, it just happens.
There's no like scanner under your car that it just picks it up and knows. Like it is manually entered.
Right. and when we have to stop, now let's say I have to
These
do that.
These computers are very old, everyone.
Right.
If you don't know, these things are from the 80s.
They are. They're
almost all of them.
old. They're very old.
There's one guy in the world that can fix them.
And that's the other side of it, right? People don't understand that part of it. So now I have to do this 7, 8, 9 times in a round of racing. Mm-hmm. Or I got to go back and I got to tell you to put your helmet on or to get ready to go, right? You see me walking the lanes, and I'm just like, let's get suited and booted. Let's get ready to go. Let's get ready to go. Dude, it's all in the name of being as efficient and get you guys as many runs as that we possibly can do.
If every run takes, 5 minutes to like 10 minutes, if you can get that down a couple minutes,
right,
that adds so much time when there's 250 pairs
right,
just in the lanes. If you can get 2 minutes out of everyone, that's huge.
Yeah.
That's a huge compounding effect.
We were able to get through D quicker than we could AB Radial, and we were able to get through C quicker than we were AB Radial. AB Radial, those guys struggle to stage their cars. They struggle to get burnouts. They put shit down on the track.
Feels like an attack on
It's
me.
not an attack. It's not an attack. It's just an observation of somebody standing out there in the heat for, 8 hours a day.
I struggled to do burnouts the whole time.
It was definitely something, when, we're watching the clock, right? And let's say I have 100 cars in D and 100 cars in C, and I've got 75, 80 cars in AB Radial. Well, I know AB Radial is going to take some time. There's prep that goes on there, right? Takes a little longer to stage some of the cars. Some of these guys, they are awesome as far as being able to go in there and then take their own buy run.
Take their own buy run.
Oh yeah, dude. Have you not watched? You should go back and watch some of the footage from Sick Week. They will go up. They will pair up. Figure they're going to go down, right? Pre-stage, stage. This guy takes off. He bumps through the lights. He backs it up again. This guy takes off. Now he's on his own solo shot.
Really? And
watch how many times.
But they wouldn't
happens.
force him down the track?
No, they allow him.
Because in most racing, that if
racing,
you do that in qualifying, that's your
you're done.
Yeah,
you're done. And
guess
that's
what? Head on down.
What I've told them. I
said,
better
floor it to get the data.
Dude, if you're at a heads up event or you're at any kind of event with a qualifying or anything else like that, that was your hit.
Yeah. I can't even imagine doing that.
Right. But you could go back and watch some of the Sick Week stuff and how many guys wind up doing that where they get their own buy run.
Weird, huh? Yeah, because as a heads up racer, I can't imagine that. That's your qualifier.
Right.
Like,
so how much time does that add?
Oh, yeah, that's a whole nother
pair. Now I got the other pair held up in the water box because this guy's got to go out there and he's got to do a solo pass.
Yeah.
And he just staged the car. I watched him stage the car. It was on the two-step. He didn't want to go down with that other car.
Yeah. And then he oils it down.
Yeah.
Then that's the same guy now because you were just on the trans brake twice, all nice and hot. Now you melt a line.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oof.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's frustrating. That's yeah, I can imagine that being frustrating. And unless you go to a lot of racing and start to really pay attention, you don't really start to think about how long a pair takes. And like, if 5-10 minutes is a long 10 minutes is a long pair.
I would say 3 to 4 minutes is probably from the time you get pulled out of the line, you get to the water box to the time you clear the racetrack. 4 minutes.
That's probably max that we should accept as like an acceptable time as other racers.
Right.
Because you got to think about, as a racer, you got to think about other racers.
Yep.
And you also want it to move quickly because you want to get back in line likely.
Right.
So you don't want to dilly-dally and ruin your chances of getting another hit at the track.
Exactly. What's the first, one of the biggest pet peeves that people have about doing the Sick Week or Drag Week style events, the drag and drive stuff? It's that they don't get enough shots at the track, right?
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes it's a direct result of the racer not being prepared or taking that solo shot or not being ready when we're trying to pull them up, which then slows down the whole process and everything else like that. So that's kind of why we do walk the lanes and that we do try to make sure that everybody is ready to go.
Yeah.
It's not that I'm trying to be some sort of, lane tyrant or anything else like that. It's because I want you to get your money's worth. I want you to get out there and I want you to get I want you to run the wheels off the thing. I don't care. Circle track that son of a bitch if you can. I don't care. But I want everybody to get an opportunity to get multiple hits at the track.
Well, you see it too at the end of the day. There's only a couple cars in there. Everybody else is on the road. You see the people sweating. They haven't gotten their pass to turn in yet.
Oh yeah.
And they're
no, it's rough.
They're worried.
Dude. It's rough. There's a lot of pressure on them to get that pass in, especially if they're, in something like Dial Your Own, right? And you're trying to get your number back.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's getting later in the day, and the numbers are not going to align because it's hotter in the day. The track is less, conducive to you getting down in a really good pass. But the other side of the equation is I have to treat people where they're at in their racing career, right? Are you brand new, or are you somebody that's been at this for a long time? And that's one of the first things we ask them in TAC. How fast you plan on going? Have you ever done this before? No, this is my first time. Deer in the headlights. Scared to death. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know where to go. Have you ever staged car to drag strip before? Yeah, all right. You're going to be fine then. Even because how many people do we have that have never done it?
That's crazy to me. I can't imagine showing up to the sick week tech line and being like, I've never gone down the drag strip before.
Right.
Like, I'm all for like newcomers and beginners, but there's a time and a place
Right.
as well.
Yep.
And that's just crazy to me. Like,
Right.
there's test and tunes all over the country all the time.
Right. But as drag and drive people, don't we pride ourselves on doing things last minute?
We do. We definitely do. But being completely novice last minute is questionable. You know, I'm all for a last minute on like getting my trailer lights wired up.
Right.
You know?
Right.
But maybe not last minute on like
The ability
what does the tree look like?
Right. I mean,
when do I lift?
do I not stage with the back tires?
Yeah. You see that too. People pull through and they start lighting the bowls of the back tires and they're like, oh, okay.
Right. So
It's gonna be a long day.
So you have to play to your audience, right? Like I have to be able to vacillate between talking with somebody that's got a ton of knowledge and has done this for a long period of time, somebody who might be an intermediate person who races a couple times a year, is familiar with everything, but clearly not an expert, doesn't do it all the time, doesn't understand the difference between a 500 Pro tree, 500 Sportsman tree, 400 Pro tree, things of that nature there, but knows how to get their car down the track.
Yeah. He can stage it up and actually do
And
all
is
that.
smart enough to ask, is the exit to the right or to the left at the end of the
Yeah.
racetrack? Unlike the poor gentleman that we had at, was it Six Summer or Drag Week one year at Indy? He went to the right and came down in the grass.
Yeah, because you
between
can
the
do that
grandstands
in
and the
you can do that in Indy.
Excuse me.
It's pretty thick grass.
It's
too.
pretty thick grass. We had to stop everything, and we had to, kind of inform him that, hey, you gotta go back up the track. But again, Bradenton, when we were working with the folks that were coming off in C&D and they were entering from the sportsman side of stuff, your exit is to the left.
Yeah.
Exit is to the left. We're letting everybody know, exit to the left. Oh, I got to go to the scales. I'm asking you to exit to the left. You will have to loop around and then go to the scales.
That's tough.
Right? Right. That's a tough thing to ask of them, right? But at the same time, I can't have the guy that needs to go to the scales in the left lane and the guy that doesn't in the right lane, and then they do this number, especially at the novice level of some C&D folks,
Yeah.
right? So we went through the lanes, exit to the left, exit to the left, exit to the left. We're trying to prepare people mentally to go down the track and be safe.
I was in a bit of a weird situation at Sick Week too, because I was letting off at the 8th and just rolling, but that put me in a lot of positions where the guy was behind me but had more speed.
Right.
So I was like watching my mirror, like really like trying to figure out, like, because I had to cross over this guy or let him go by, and like, but he had more speed. He had probably had the chutes out. I'm just kind of rolling, but I'm still like 110 miles an hour.
Right.
But I'm like, what do I do here?
Right.
And-
but as a racer that's done this before, those are the questions that you're asking yourself, and you're preparing yourself mentally when you go down the track to have that situational awareness.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I'm like, I usually don't try to come to a full stop and then make the turn. So I'm like, I carry a little speed, like,
Right.
so I'm coasting. So it just definitely just made it weird doing that. Normally I'm like shoots out, so I'm not really in the same boat.
Right. And you're beside somebody, and you
Yeah.
guys are pretty equal in ET and mile an hour.
And it's always assumed that the guy with the, like, he had the shoots out, so I was kind of trying to give him the right of way.
You're right.
He was a faster car, trying to give the faster car the right of way, but I'm ahead of you.
Right.
So it's like, and we've seen it at World Cup where I've seen some crossover to the early turns where I think Jared Holt one year in that green Supra had to like fully lock up his brakes on a pass because this Pro Mod next to him took the early exit
Right.
right out in front of him.
Right in front of him.
And it's like you're in like a big tire, you know, not a Pro Mod, but it's like an old Pro stock car with a Honda swap, you know, those like
Right.
one of those type of deals, or like a rotary. And they just cut in front of him with the chutes out in the early exit, and it's like,
so
what are you doing?
think about it for a minute there, how long some of those guys will sit at the tree and the other guy's already taken off, and then they wind up going. That creates that situation that you're just talking about right there, right? Now he's already out. That's his fault, right? Like, his situational awareness is poor. You should know where your competition is at all times.
Yep.
And that's one of the things where, you know, I was telling you we're going to be doing that plates and 28 Woodstock deal at Edgewater in April. Thursday, we're going to open up tech. And then between 3 and 4 p.m., we're going to have a newbie class. And we're going to bring people out onto the racetrack, and we're going to explain to them how it all works and what they need to do and what they need to be aware of. And
so old man Bill has to calmly teach all these young drivers.
Yeah, he's going to do great, man.
He's going to have to calmly answer all these questions.
No, I'm gonna be there with him. I'm gonna help out.
I like Bill. I get a kick out of him. It's fun to get him fired up.
We have a really good rapport, and it's been a lot of fun working with him at all these different events and stuff like that, and seeing what he's got going on out there. But I think that's important, right? Like, that just shows that you're invested in creating some new energy into the sport, and to bring some new people in. And maybe you haven't done it in 25 or 30 years, and your car's collecting dust, and you're like, you know what, man, before I freaking kick the bucket here, I need to get this thing out, and I need to go enjoy it, and this is what I built it for.
I get
and
so
life
mad.
got in the way.
I get so mad at people that are like, oh, my car's too slow to go to a test and tune at Bradenton. What are you talking about? What are you talking about?
There's nothing too slow to take to a test and tune. Those are absolutely some of the best days at the racetrack that you'll ever have.
I'm like, as long as it's not leaking fluid, go make a pass.
Go make a pass.
Like, you'll see a freaking bone stock Prius out there.
Right.
It doesn't matter. No one cares.
No one cares.
People in line will probably be more interested in talking to you. Like, the lines, the BMP test and tune lines are such like a great environment of just people talking about their cars and having fun. It's like a car show where you're about to go make a pass.
Right.
And then you come back around and you're doing a car show with different people. So it's like, it's almost like a constant roulette of like, oh, who am I going to be talking to?
Exactly.
Now?
And to have the interaction with your fellow drivers and fellow enthusiasts and stuff like that, especially new blood, right? So important. And that's why when people are online and they're arguing over stuff, or they're just bitching about things and just taking away from the sport, right? I can't stand it, and I try not to engage in any of that negativity. I really love to see people have a positive time when they come to the racetrack, and I don't care how fast you go. Like, I really don't. I'm in the middle of trying to put together a 72 Pontiac Le Mans right now that I can drive on 6 Summer and that I can drive at Sick Week. And I want to drive that Pontiac, and I want to be the last guy to go down the racetrack every day. I'm still going to work the event, still going to do my thing. I want to have a cool car, a cool hot rod to tag along with everybody else. But I want to be able to make that last pass down the track. I don't care how fast it goes.
Yeah. I mean, that's half a Sick Week is like, I don't care how fast it goes.
Right.
I just want to do it.
Right.
And that's a lot of the event. I know Sick Summer probably leans a little bit more that way than Sick Week.
Right.
Sick Week's a little bit faster.
Yeah, it's a little more hardcore.
Yeah. So how do you describe the breakdown of your business? Because it's promotion, it's tech, but it's also kind of like an in-between thing.
Yeah.
So you're RTRA, Radial Tire Racing Association.
That's me.
That's your deal.
Yep.
And you are tech for hire. So
Tech for hire.
People like, Nate Prater at his event bring you in plates and 28s to use. Are they paying you for your rule package?
So they're paying for us to come in and manage their safety inspections on the cars to make sure that they're conforming. As always, the tech card and your signature on the tech card says that you're ultimately responsible for your knowledge of the rules and compliance and everything else like that. I'm just there to make sure that you signed on it and you said that you're aware of your responsibilities as a driver and a car owner when you go down the racetrack. And then again, make sure that the equipment and gear that you've brought are appropriate to the ET level that you're going to be running. So that's the first thing is the safety side of thing. Now, if there's a class inspection component, we've got to make sure the car's steel roof and quarters, or it's 28s only, or the wheelbase needs to be met. Those are other things that we also do at all these events. And on top of that, writing rules packages, did the Midwest Pro Mod revision this year, competition director at World Series of Pro Mod, and dealing with tech directly there with myself and my team.
Competition director is a little different because that includes like actual incidents, like, he went red, but he crossed the line, who won type of stuff.
Yeah.
Where somebody has to make that final call.
Yep. And that is done just as a sidebar between myself and the tower. If there's an infraction or something like that, we have to heavily rely on the starter and people up at the starting line itself. So when I'm in tech, that's not really something that I can deal. The competition stuff is really based on the parity and the adjustments and stuff like that, more so than the actual competition.
Okay.
As far as on the racetrack is concerned.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So, you were race director at that kind of stuff. Do you touch TX2K? No, they got their own deal.
No, they got their own deal going on. I do FL2K, the reunion race.
Lights Out.
Yep, Lights Out, No Mercy, Nate's stuff, Streetcar Bragging Rights, my own race, Carolina Gold. We do a lot of the 484 stuff for Mike Hill. We work with Travis and those guys up at Lance at Carolina No Time. There's a couple of races that they need us in managing stuff. So we help run staging lanes or, do pairings, run scales, safety tech, class tech. I also generate sponsorship dollars and limited street fund for our points with all our sponsors, and I do all the payouts for all the limited street stuff with our sponsors and stuff like that throughout the year.
So no matter where that's at, limited street's still under your jurisdiction. And over the years, you've turned over events to other people.
Yeah.
Like X275, you started, but did you sell that?
No.
But
I still own X275. Okay. Still own Ultra, still own Limited. But as it's grown and as it's become part of a racing series has a rule committee, and that rule committee really needs to do what's best for the series itself. And,
And are other racers in those committees?
No, there are no racers on the rule committee.
Interesting. Okay, so I kind of now have a grasp on how you do that, and balancing your own events versus teching others seems like a tough one.
Yeah, it can be kind of cumbersome sometimes, and that's why I don't race, is because I've got my hands in so many things that I just don't have the opportunity and time to do it anymore.
Yeah.
So I've kind of taken a step back from that, but hopefully this year we'll make a little bit of a change and get the car out a couple times and make some passes in it.
That'd be nice. Well, man, I'll let you get out of here. How can people keep up with everything? I know you're mostly active on your personal, just John Sears. People follow you on Facebook.
John Sears on Facebook, but it's also John Sears RTRA on Instagram.
Yep.
And we're on there quite often. And you can catch us pretty much at any drag race up and down the East Coast, and sometimes as far as the Pacific Coast, depending on what NPK's got going on.
Yeah, that'll be cool to see how that works out.
Yeah, hopefully everything goes well and we get that thing pushed back in the right direction in the public eye.
Well, guys, you know where John will be at. Go cry about the rules personally to him. I've done it my fair share of times. I try to be as vocal as possible, crying about rules. It's happened before where I've gotten screwed, but I try to bite my tongue a little bit too. I think some of us as racers bite our tongue when we probably shouldn't on people being against the rules. And
yep.
Just happens.
Sometimes it's all in a presentation too, right? Maybe a little sidebar. Hey, I think so-and-so is doing this. You mind going there and taking a look?
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with us going over there and doing a cursory inspection on somebody's stuff. Just as an opportunity to make sure everything's doing right, because not everybody's honest.
Well, it happened at Sick Week where there was the rules where it's like, hey, this guy doesn't have an H pattern trans, but it's not in the rules that it has to be H pattern.
Right.
Like every other stick shift ever
is H pattern.
H pattern is in the rules. And, Sick Week just overlooked putting it in there, or they just didn't want it in there.
Yep. And you've got people that are in charge of the rules, and the way they look at things and the way they interpret things is a little different maybe than I would. One of the things that we made sure with the whole 6 series that's going to be going on at Rockingham and at Bowling Green, Sick at the Rock and Sick on the Green, we have H pattern. We have a stick shift class. It's H pattern only.
Says H pattern.
Says H pattern.
As it should.
Yep.
Yeah, because stick shift that H pattern doesn't mean anything.
Doesn't mean anything at all.
It could be a turbo 400.
Put a power glide in it. I don't care.
Yeah, it's got clutches. You shift it.
Right.
Yeah.
Nope, I agree.
Yep. All right. Well, guys, we'll see you next time. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe and all that good stuff.